Welcome back to Study Hall, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting. This executive order that first imposed tariffs on Canadian goods.
Okay.
But then, right away put them on hold.
Interesting.
I know, right? It's like, what's going on here? And I think for anyone who likes to learn about how the world works, this is a really great example of how international relations,
absolutely,
economic policy, all these things kind of come together.
For sure.
So I'm really excited to unpack this with you.
Me too.
So let's jump right in.
Okay.
So this executive order came out on February 1st.
Right.
And it said that certain issues with Canada, mainly drug trafficking, are actually a national security threat to the U.S.
Wow.
Yeah. And so to address this, the president invoked something called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
IEEPA.
IEEPA, exactly.
Right.
To impose tariffs on Canadian goods. So IEEPA, that's usually used in pretty extreme circumstances, right?
Exactly. Yeah. IEPA, you're talking terrorism, war, huge international conflicts.
Yeah.
That's when you usually see IEPA being invoked.
Right.
And it basically gives the president a lot of power to control economic transactions when there's a national emergency.
Right.
So using it to address drug trafficking from Canada.
From Canada.
Your close ally and neighbor.
Right.
I gotta say, that's not really the norm.
Not typical, no.
Not typical at all.
So it makes you wonder, what's going on behind the scenes that would cause such a strong response?
Yeah, it's unusual, to say the least.
To say the least.
Yeah, to really grasp the significance of this, think about how IEP has been used in the past, like during the hostage crisis with Iran, or against Gaddafi's regime in Libya.
Okay, yeah.
These were situations with hostile governments.
Right.
Or threats of war.
Yeah.
Using it with Canada, a longstanding ally and a major trading partner.
Right.
That's pretty much unprecedented in recent history.
Wow. So it's not just unusual, it's unheard of.
Pretty much, yeah.
And here's what makes it even more interesting.
Okay.
They announced these tariffs on February 1st.
Okay.
With a start date of February 4th.
Right.
But then on February 3rd, a new executive order delayed the tariffs until March 4th.
Oh, wow. So just a couple days later.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
That's a really fast turnaround.
Right.
Do you think maybe Canada made some concessions behind the scenes?
It's possible.
Or maybe the initial announcement was just a way to put pressure on Canada.
To make them act quickly.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Yeah. You got to consider all the angles here.
Yeah. And if we look at the actual wording of the order, there's some pretty strong language.
Like what?
Well, it says that the president will take necessary steps, including the immediate implementation of the tariffs if things don't improve.
Necessary steps.
Yeah.
That sounds serious.
Right. It's like they're not messing around.
No kidding. And it leaves you wondering, what exactly does necessary steps include?
Yeah, what else could they do besides tariffs?
Well, who knows? Maybe sanctions?
Right.
Diplomatic restrictions? Maybe even stricter border security?
It's like they're showing they have all these options.
Exactly.
And they're not afraid to use them.
It's a definite show of force.
And I wonder what kind of message this sends to other countries.
Oh, yeah. Other countries are definitely watching this.
Right?
They're taking notes.
Do you think it's like the U.S. showing off its economic power?
It could be seen that way.
Yeah, like a warning to anyone who might not cooperate with them?
Definitely a possibility.
So this isn't just about Canada and drug trafficking, then?
No, this is bigger than that.
Yeah, it's about how the U.S. wants to deal with other countries in the future.
Exactly. It's about setting the tone for future relationships.
Wow. This is getting really interesting.
It is, isn't it? And we're just getting started.
I know. This is a really complex situation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure our listeners are already thinking about what this all means.
I hope so. We want them to engage with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you were advising the Canadian government right now, what would you tell them to do? What's the best move in this situation?
Well, I think the most important thing for Canada right now is to be transparent.
Okay.
They need to clearly communicate what they're doing to address the U.S.'s concerns.
Yeah, to build some trust.
Exactly, and maybe avoid those tariffs.
Right.
But at the same time, Canada has to think about its own interests, too.
Of course.
How far are they willing to go to make the U.S. happy?
Right. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, they got to find that balance between cooperation and just giving in.
Exactly. And then there's the whole geopolitical side of things, too.
Right.
Canada can't look like they're just caving to U.S. pressure.
No, because then other countries might start making demands, too.
Yeah, it's a really tricky situation.
It is. It's a real balancing act.
So it's not just about economics.
No.
It's about international relations and global politics.
It's about everything.
And I think that's what makes this so fascinating.
Me too.
Shows how interconnected everything is.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And then we'll be back to dig even deeper into this.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.
Can't wait. When you think about it, this whole thing gets even more complicated when you factor in how closely the U.S. and Canadian economies are tied together.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Any kind of disruption to their trades can have a big impact.
Yeah, a huge impact. They exchange so much stuff every day.
Like what?
Oh, you name it. Cars, energy, food, tourism, all kinds of things.
Wow.
And if you mess with that flow, even for a little bit,
Yeah.
it's going to hurt businesses, consumers, even the governments on both sides.
It's like the domino effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These decisions, they have real-world consequences.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They affect real people.
And not just in the U.S. and Canada either.
Oh, right, because of globalization.
Yeah, exactly. It's all connected. Let's say the U.S. puts tariffs on Canadian lumber.
Okay.
What do you think happens?
Well, I guess building houses in the U.S. gets more expensive.
Right.
And then fewer people can afford to buy homes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in Canada, the lumber producers suddenly have way less demand for their product.
Oh, wow. So they might have to lay off workers.
Right.
And then those communities suffer.
It's a chain reaction.
That's a good example. It shows how connected we all are.
Yeah, and how easily things can go wrong.
So this whole situation with Canada, it's really high stakes.
Oh, yeah. The stakes are huge.
Especially when you think about that language in the executive order.
Yeah.
About the president taking necessary steps.
Right.
What else could they be thinking about besides tariffs?
Well, imagine they freeze the assets of Canadian companies.
Uh-huh.
The ones they suspect are involved in drug trafficking.
Okay.
Or what if they restrict visas for Canadians?
Wow.
Making it harder to travel for business or tourism?
That would be a big deal.
Right. Those are some of the things necessary steps could include.
It sounds pretty serious, especially when you consider that the U.S. and Canada are supposed to be such good friends.
I know. It's not like they're dealing with some hostile government.
Right. It's totally different from those situations where they used IEEPA in the past.
It makes you wonder if this really is a national emergency.
Right.
Or if there's something else going on.
Like maybe they're just trying to flex their muscles.
Maybe. They want to send a message to the rest of the world.
Like, don't mess with us.
Exactly. We'll do what it takes to get our way.
Wow. So this isn't just about Canada at all.
Nope. This is about the U.S. and how they want to operate on the world stage.
It's about power.
Exactly. And that brings us to an even bigger question.
What's that?
What does all of this mean for the future of international relations?
Oh, wow. That's a big one. How do we even begin to answer that?
Well, I think we're seeing a shift happening.
A shift.
Yeah. Countries are moving away from diplomacy. And they're becoming more focused on using their economic power to get what they want.
So instead of working together, they're using trade as a weapon.
Yeah. It's like economic warfare.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what happens if that keeps going?
Well, it could make the world a lot more unstable.
How so?
Because trade and economic ties are supposed to bring countries closer together.
Right.
Not drive them apart.
So it's like the opposite of what's supposed to happen.
Exactly. It's a real paradox.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary if you think about it.
It is a little bit. Yeah.
So what can we do? How do we deal with this?
Well, it's tough. But I think we have to start by recognizing that economic power is a double-edged sword. Meaning it can be used for good or for bad.
Okay.
It depends on who's wielding it.
So we need good leaders?
We need leaders who understand the impact of their decisions.
Uh-huh.
Leaders who are careful and who are willing to talk things out.
Leaders who prioritize diplomacy.
Exactly. We need leaders who want to work with other countries.
Not against them. But finding those leaders, that's not easy.
It's not, but it's essential.
Yeah, it is. It's like the key to a better future.
I think so, too.
And speaking of the future, I'd love to hear what our listeners are thinking about all of this.
Oh, me too.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
And I know our listeners have a lot to say.
So if you're out there listening, share your thoughts with us. What are your takeaways from this conversation so far? What aha moments have you had? Or maybe you have new questions that have come up. We want to hear it all.
You know, it's interesting when you think about how this situation with the U.S. and Canada fits into the bigger picture?
It definitely raises some questions about where things are headed globally.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, we've seen this rise in tensions around the world.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of countries seem to be moving away from working together, and instead they're putting their own interests first.
So you're saying this whole thing with the tariffs,
yeah,
it's part of a bigger trend?
it could be. Instead of using diplomacy to solve problems, right,
Countries are using their economic power to get what they want.
like a power play.
Exactly.
But we've talked about how that can backfire.
Oh, absolutely. Those economic tools can make things worse.
Yeah, they can damage relationships even with allies.
It's a delicate balance, for sure.
So how do countries navigate that?
Well, it's like playing chess.
Okay.
Every move has consequences.
Right.
You have to think several steps ahead.
And in this case, the stakes are even higher.
Yeah, because the U.S. and Canada are so closely tied together.
Right. Their economies are intertwined.
Exactly. So any damage to one is going to hurt the other.
So what does this mean for the future of their relationship?
That's the big question, isn't it? Can they move past this?
Or is this a sign of things to come?
It's hard to say for sure, but if the U.S. keeps using economic pressure on Canada,
Yeah.
it could really damage their trust.
Yeah, that would be bad for everyone.
Oh, definitely. The U.S. and Canada have always been strong partners,
Right.
and a breakdown in their relationship would have ripple effects all over the world. So this whole thing with the tariffs, it's about more than just trade.
Exactly. It's about the balance of power in the world.
And the future of global cooperation.
It's a lot to think about.
It is, and we've only just scratched the surface here.
We have. But hopefully this has given our listeners a better understanding of what's going on.
And why it matters.
Exactly. These are complex issues.
Yeah, they are.
But they affect all of us.
So it's important to stay informed.
And to keep asking questions.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking.
As always, we encourage you to keep learning.
And stay curious about the world around you.
Absolutely. Because the more we understand,
the better equipped we'll be to face the challenges ahead.
Well said.
Until next time, keep those minds engaged.
And thanks for listening.